Don't forget to pray for me. Keep praying, because there's supposed to be the biggest rocket attack so far is supposed to happen tomorrow or the next day. So be praying for me, especially about that. And I hope that this lesson on the Apocalypse 18, first half, verses 1 through 13, is a deep blessing for you. Okay, I cannot wait any longer. I've got to go ahead and record this one. This is, that was interesting. Flash of light there. I don't know if the electricity's coming back on or staying off. I don't know what's going on. It just went off, and so we have no lights, and I'm going to go ahead and read this anyway. This is the Apocalypse, chapter 18, better known as Revelation. It's literally apocalypse, and that comes from the Greek, actually, that word. It means the uncovering, and so we get the word revelation, to reveal, right? But revealing doesn't mean that it was covered. Revealing means it was unknown, and we don't know if it was covered and hidden or concealed or what, but it was unknown. To reveal something to someone can also mean to educate them, to show them something they couldn't see before. And so it's metaphorical. Revelation can be used as a metaphor in a way that doesn't mean apocalypse. So apocalypse, we tend to think of Armageddon when we say the apocalypse. But Armageddon is a battle within the apocalypse. The apocalypse is the uncovering, the unconcealing. All right, let's go ahead. Another translation of it could be the filching away. And that's not the rapture. Because St. Paul talks about the man of lawlessness being filched away, being snatched up by the Lord Jesus. So let's go ahead and read this. I'm not going to read the whole chapter because I've gotten up through verse 11, I think it is, 13. I want to read up through 13. And then the second video is going to be from 14 to the end, which is, I think, 25, verse 24. All right, here we go. This is the rooted word, Common English translation of Apocalypse 18. In the midst of these things, I stare at to discern yet another angel, stepping accordingly from out of the heaven, having great power from out of being, the exousia. And the land is shed with light from rays of light from out of his glory, evoking reaction. And he croaks like a raven in a forcible tone, laying forth in words, quote, Babylon the Great falls down out of flight and causes herself to be a permanent dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unpurged spirit and a prison of every unpurged creature that rises upward, but also having been spitefully persecuted. The creatures rising upward, having been spitefully persecuted. And so from out of the wine of the hard-breathing passion to rush in to sacrifice from her harlotry of an exchange for illicit sexual desire. The ethnicities have fallen down out of flight. And the sovereign rulers of the land commit harlotry of an exchange for illicit sexual desire. And the movers of merchandise throughout the land, traversing to pierce, become fulfilled in this life from out of the capable power of her straining to gain. And I hear another tone from out of the heaven laying forth in words, quote, Depart from out of her, my people, in order that you may not commune together in her deprivations of allotment. And depart from out of her blows, that you may not get a hold of them upon you. Let me read that again. And depart from out of her blows, that you may not get hold of them upon you. For the deprivations of allotment are glued from her to the heaven. That's what it says. That's literally what it says. Glued. And God exercises his memory for her iniquity. You must give off to her in the same manner that she also gives off. And you must double to her, double, synchronized to her actions, in the cup in which she mingles to herself double. As much as she renders herself glorious, evoking reaction, and strains to gain, so much as this you must give her torture and passionate grief. That's what it says in the Greek. For in her heart she is laying forth, quote, I am sitting myself accordingly as a queen, and I am not being a deficient widow, and I may not stare at to discern passionate grief. End quote. Through that, in one day, the blows will be present of her death and passionate grief and scarcity of food. And in fire she will be burned accordingly. For forcibly mighty is Lord the God, the one dividing to distinguish her by decision. And the sovereign rulers of the land, those committing harlotry of an exchange for illicit sexual desire and straining to gain amidst her, will sob aloud and will beat themselves in a superimposition upon her, whenever they may be looking at the smoke from the igniting of her on fire. Having stood from off of a distance through the fear of the torture of her, they are laying forth in words, woe, woe, the great city Babylon, the forcibly mighty city. Though in 1 hour the critical judgment against you comes. And the movers of merchandise traversing to pierce throughout the earth will sob aloud and will grieve passionately upon her, that not even one is any longer awakening to gather in the market for their bulging load. Not even one. A bulging load of gold and of shining silver and of valuable stone and of pearl and of white linen and of purple and of silk and of crimson, and for every fragrant wood, and for every ivory container, and for every container from out of valuable wood, and of hollowed copper, and of iron, and of marble, and for cinnamon, and for aromas of incense burned in religious services, and for myrrh, and for incense tree, and for wine, and for olive oil, and for fine wheat flour, and for grain, and for sheep, and for domesticated animals, and of horses, and of four-wheeled vehicles, and of bodies and of souls of human beings. Very graphic. When it's translated properly from the Greek, The Bible reads far more intense than it does in these watered down, generic, pansy translations that avoid the difficulties. It's pretty graphic. Pretty graphic. There's a lot to think about. I want you to go back and listen to this section of the video again, where I'm reading the Apocalypse, chapter 18, verses 1 through 13. Don't go running to the English translations and reading them, because that's just it's going to weaken your memory of what it actually says in the Greek. This is handwritten. I did this in the dark. Each time I translated, it was without electricity. This is the second version. The first one, it looks more like this. Bigger letters, lots of arrows, things like that. Pieces scratched out, moved around. This is more of, not quite a final, but almost a final version. I want you to go back and listen closely to it. The straining to gain. Okay? I think it's translated luxury, but that's not what it means at all. That's included in it, but it's not the only thing. The focus is on straining, like special straining, intensifying your efforts to the point almost of pain in order to gain. And this idea of gaining is throughout the New Testament in a very negative way. But in one particular famous verse, it is in a positive way. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Okay? But greed is literally gain also. So it's a heaping up of more, literally. And so if you go and watch I think I've got 2 videos on Matthew 6, where I talk about that passage where Jesus talks about laying up treasures in heaven. Yeah. But go ahead and listen to this again. I want you to listen to it a couple or 3 or 4 times. The more that you listen to it, the more that you're going to get what God is saying in this passage. And do that in preparation for the next part. As soon as I finish this second version of the translation of the next part, 14 through 24, then I will read it like I have here. Then when I go through the whole thing a third time, all I'm doing at that point is making sure that I'm wording exactly the same where the same word appears. It's pretty close, but there's maybe a small difference between a couple of them. And so if it's the same word, sometimes I'll have like where I've refined the translation of that word better. Because I usually, some of these words that you're very familiar with are replaced by 2 or 3 word phrases, because that's necessary in order to capture what it means. Otherwise, in English, the word that is used is oftentimes loaded with meaning that isn't there in the Greek, and it's missing the meaning that's in the Greek. It's loaded in the Greek word. And so in order to load that into English and avoid the loading of this word, like luxury, right? I have to replace it with 2 or 3 words, like straining to gain. So, and then I'm just trying to make sure that that phrase is exactly the same in each case, because I've refined it as I've been translating those verses. So that's the next stage. After I finish this second step of translation for 14 through 24, then I'll go back through the chapter and I will just synchronize each one, because I've also been making a mini dictionary. I don't have that right here, but I have a mini dictionary, a miniature dictionary for this chapter, where the words that I am doing that with, avoiding the English word that's typically translated as, because that's not what it is anyway in the Greek, but translating it with the Greek word and loading it with its meaning based on its etymology, based on the context, then that's in the miniature dictionary for that word. I put the Greek word, Strong's number, and then the rooted word definition. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart, and don't forget to pray.